Chicago's Boulevard System is a 28-mile road network spanning the south, west, and north sides of the city. It was conceived in the mid-1800s as a way of connecting a series of 8 major parks throughout the city via a series of wide streets with park-like medians and lined with stately homes. Prior to its creation, Chicago was plagued by congestion and a lack of green space while not living up to its moniker as the city in a garden. The boulevards and the parks that they connect were described as an emerald necklace, and for over 125 years they have delivered that vision while being one of the lesser-known features of Chicago. This video is a tour of the Chicago Boulevard System with stops in all of the parks via the 25 boulevards that connect them. The ride runs in a clockwise fashion, beginning on the south side of Chicago and visiting Jackson, Washington, Sherman, and McKinley parks. Stops are made at Douglas and Garfield parks on the west side, before the tour concludes on the north side with stops at Humboldt and Lincoln parks. Along the way, the rich history of the Boulevard System will be explored, along with the current conditions that will be encountered on a bike ride through this emerald necklace around Chicago.
Today I'm in Bronzeville on the south side of Chicago, and I'm going on a tour of the 25-plus network of boulevards that connect over 8 Chicago parks.
The tour begins in the Bronzeville neighborhood on Martin Luther King Boulevard, just south of the McCormick Place Convention Center. Originally named Grand Boulevard, this road has 2 lanes in each direction, bike lanes, and a large median in the center. There are a mixture of high-rise condos, historic buildings, and commercial uses along the 4-mile ride south to Washington Park. Immediately upon starting, the ride passes by the monument to the Great Northern Migration. This 15-foot-high bronze statue depicts a man in a suit comprised of worn shoe soles. It memorializes the 4 million-plus African Americans that made the journey from the south to the north throughout the 1900s. The first of dozens of boulevard interpretive signs appear along Martin Luther King Boulevard. These attractively designed kiosks offer an overview of the boulevard system on one side and information specific to where the sign is situated on the other. They were placed in 1995 and provide great information while offering reminders that you are on the right path in a setting worthy of historical anecdotes. You know, the informational signs that appear throughout the 28-mile boulevard system are really great. They were installed in 1995 under the second Richard Daley mayor of Chicago, and they're really well designed. They've got a lot of information, and they're very frequent. They're almost, one side is just an overview of the entire system. The other side is specific to the location that you're actually at. But over the past 30 years, they've become fairly weathered. A lot of, fading, rusting on the metal elements, and some graffiti and just general neglect. So it's high time that the city of Chicago invest in these wonderful signs. They're a real asset to the route, but they are in need of attention. The Victory Monument dominates the intersection at 35th Street. This monument was erected in 1927 and is dedicated to the all-African American 8th Regiment of the Illinois National Guard that served in France in World War I. A doughboy soldier added in 1936 stands atop a granite shaft with 3 bronze relief panels. There is also a bronze relief inlaid in the sidewalk that contains a detailed map of the Bronzeville neighborhood that highlights the area's cultural and historical significance. 47th Street marks the heart of the Chicago Blues District. Statues of blues musicians adorn each corner of the intersection, and there are murals and signage that mark the role music played on the South Side throughout the 20th century. The Harold Washington Cultural Center sits at this intersection, along with the statue of the first African-American mayor of Chicago. Martin Luther King Boulevard meets the southwest corner of Washington Park at 51st Street. This intersection is presided over by a statue of General George Washington on a horse that was dedicated in 1905. Washington Park was built in the 1870s after the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. The South Parks Commission was established to oversee the creation of Washington and Jackson parks, and the commission hired Frederick Law Olmsted to design these parks. Olmsted had come to prominence with his design of New York's Central Park in the 1850s. Olmsted expanded the scope of city parks with water features and natural settings that sharply contrasts life in a big city. Washington Park features recreational fields on the north end and lagoons in the southern half. The southwest corner contains the Fountain of Time, which commemorates the first 100 years of peace between the U.S. and Britain after the War of 1812. It was dedicated in 1920 and serves as the southeast entry point to Washington Park. Washington Park also is home to the DuSable Museum of African History. The museum was created in 1961 and opened in the park in 2004. The northeast corner of Washington Park contains the Drexel Fountain. This sculpture dates to the 1880s and contains a bronze statue of Francis Drexel, a Philadelphia banker who became a major donor to Southside infrastructure initiatives in the first half of the 1800s. It is one of the oldest sculptures in Chicago, and the boulevard extending north from its base is named in honor of the man atop the fountain, Drexel Boulevard. Drexel Boulevard takes the route back north and away from the next park on the tour, Jackson Park. However, it is worth the extra pedaling, as the street is lined with some of the most stately homes in the Boulevard system, and the median running in the middle of the road is especially wide and provides winding paths on which to ride. Drexel Boulevard runs through the Kenwood neighborhood, which is home to Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Push Coalition headquarters, which is on the east side of the boulevard. Kenwood has also been the home of many famous Chicagoans, including Barack and Michelle Obama, Louis Farrakhan, and Muhammad Ali. These homes lie a few blocks to the east of Drexel Boulevard and are surrounded by impressive homes of varying styles.
You know, Drexel Boulevard, it takes you a little bit out of the way. You head back north after coming south on Martin Luther King Drive. But I'll tell you what, this median kind of pathway all the way along Drexel, it's great. It's nice houses on both sides and zero interaction with cars. The other roads they have nice bike lanes, but you're in a park. It's like a bike trail from, 50th to 35th. So it's worth the extra pedaling.
Drexel Boulevard ends after 1.5 miles at Oakwood Boulevard. This presents an opportunity to make a right turn towards Lake Michigan to get onto the lakefront path for the trip back south to Jackson Park. The lakefront path goes through Burnham Park during the 3-mile ride south, and there are Great Lake views along the way before departing the path at the 57th Street underpass. The Museum of Science and Industry stands at the west side of the underpass and at the north end of Jackson Park. Along with Washington Park, the South Parks Commission was charged with Jackson Park's creation, and Frederick Law Olmsted oversaw this project. Construction was slow throughout the 1870s and 1880s. However, the World's Fair of 1893 kick-started the construction, as Jackson Park was selected to be the principal location of the fair. The 1893 fair is famous for the White City, a series of neoclassical white plaster buildings lit up with electrical lights and surrounded by water. The Museum of Science and Industry was the Palace of Fine Arts and is the only remaining building from the White City. The building is adorned with many classical elements and backs up to a large lagoon lined with cherry blossoms. When passing to the backside of the Museum of Science and Industry, you will see the towering structure that houses the Barack Obama Presidential Library. The Obama Center's placement in Jackson Park stirred controversy due to its imposing height, close proximity to other established sites, and for not positioning itself in nearby Washington Park, a park that is in much greater need of investment and visitors. The key feature of Jackson Park is an island with meandering paths through gardens and around lagoons. This island is accessed via footbridges on each end and is home to the Osaka Gardens, which are Japanese-style gardens that are situated in the center of where the World's Fair took place. The Columbia statue stands at the southern edge of Jackson Park. This 24-foot-high gilded bronze statue is a replica of the 65-foot statue that stood at the 1893 fair. It was erected upon the 25th anniversary of the fair and is a visual reminder of the classical extravagance that was on display. The Midway Plaisance can be accessed at the western base of the Obama Center. Upon passing under the railroad embankment that takes trains south of the city, the wide expanse of the Plaisance comes into view. This 1-mile-long linear park was created for the World's Fair and was named for its midway location between Washington and Jackson Parks. It was lined with buildings and entertainment during the fair and contained the world's first Ferris wheel. The Midway Plaisance also serves as the southern border of the University of Chicago campus. The University of Chicago opened in 1892, just 1 year before the fair. A detour off of the Plaisance and through the campus is worth the effort. The main quadrangle is surrounded by impressive buildings that provide an atmosphere befitting of one of the most prestigious universities in America. Additionally, Frank Lloyd Wright's Roby House sits at the eastern end of the quadrangle and is one of the best examples of Wright's prairie-style architecture in the world. On the northwest side of the campus is the nuclear energy sculpture, which stands at the site of the world's first controlled nuclear fission reaction in 1942. The Midway Plaisance terminates at the Fountain of Time sculpture at the southeast corner of Washington Park. A ride through the lagoons of Washington Park and past the pool house brings a ride to Garfield Boulevard, which travels west through the south side of Chicago. Upon passing under the Green Line, it is worth taking note of the south side entrance, which contains a refurbished stop dating to 1892. It is here that fairgoers got off the train on their way to the fair. The stretch of road beyond the historic Garfield stop can get congested while passing over the Dan Ryan Expressway and past some railroad yards. While the road is quite wide, there are no dedicated bike lanes, and many of the historical buildings have been replaced with commercial uses or vacant lots. The buildings that remain illustrate the grandness that went into the boulevard's creation. However, also display signs of economic decline in the area. Many buildings have been razed, abandoned, and have signs of general neglect. Despite these realities, Garfield Boulevard still provides a look at the history of Chicago, both good and bad. Sherman Park is reached at Racine Avenue and provides a welcome opportunity to travel off of Garfield Boulevard and into this uniquely shaped park. The park is rectangularly shaped with an island in the center, surrounded by water that resembles a moat. Footbridges at each corner provide access to the island that contains recreational fields. A field house and pool are on the north end of the park that can be accessed via the winding paths of the park. Garfield Boulevard comes to an end at Western Avenue. This intersection is the site of Gage Park. Gage Park dates to the 1870s, however it does not contain the natural features as the other parks in the Boulevard system. It has portions on all four sides of the intersection, and its use is more utilitarian than a retreat from city life. Western Avenue takes a ride north through a commercial setting in which most of the historical buildings have been replaced with commercial and industrial uses. The road is wide and the parkway median remains, however, traffic can be heavy and there is oftentimes no bike lane on which to ride. Upon crossing Pershing Road, McKinley Park is encountered. McKinley Park was established in 1902 by the South Park Commission and was named after President William McKinley, who had been assassinated 1 year earlier. While lesser known, McKinley Park contains all of the features of the more prominent parks in the Boulevard system, albeit on a smaller scale.
You know, all these parks are really impressive. They all have water features, winding paths to walk on, nature areas, and you've never really even heard of them from Chicago. I'm in McKinley Park right now, and that's a deep cut. I've never heard of McKinley Park, honestly. And here I am in McKinley Park, and it's just gorgeous. Lots of people out enjoying the day and all the amenities that the park has to offer. So it's really cool to see new things in the city you've lived in for, in my case, 50 years.
After departing McKinley Park, Western Boulevard passes under I-55 and over the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal. The bridge over the canal offers a diagonal look at the southern skyline of downtown Chicago, while ships are oftentimes passing underneath. Once over the canal, the route turns left onto 31st Boulevard and passes by the backside of the Cook County Department of Corrections. This facility houses over 5,000 detainees who are typically awaiting trial at the courthouse across the street at 26 in California. The courthouse building was built in 1929 and is an Art Deco high-rise style.
26 in California, the Cook County Criminal Courthouse. You generally don't want to be here. Jury service, court case, there's no fun in there.
After crossing 26, California makes some turns while passing by the Marquette Monument, and the road becomes Marshall Boulevard. This road terminates at the south end of Douglas Park. Douglas Park was created in 1869 by the West Park Commission. Originally named South Park, the 173-acre park was renamed Douglas Park in honor of U.S. Senator Stephen A. Douglas. The park was renamed in 2020 when an additional S was added to the park name to commemorate abolitionist Frederick Douglass and his wife Anna. The name mostly remains the same, however the person to which the park is dedicated has changed completely.
Just got to Douglas Park. Anna and Frederick Douglas. Not to be mistaken with Stephen Douglas, who only had one S in his last name. Frederick Douglass, he had two S's. And this is Frederick Douglass Park.
A cultural and community center sits in the center of the park that overlooks lagoons that are surrounded by walking paths in a series of natural settings. Douglas Boulevard extends west of the park through the Lawndale neighborhood. Similar to the parkway on Drexel Boulevard, the median along Douglas Boulevard contains a winding pathway beneath old-growth trees that provides an alternative to riding on the road. The buildings on each side are dominated by brick, multi-unit apartments, and there is a statue at the point in which Douglas Boulevard makes a right turn north, whereupon it becomes Independence Boulevard.
I'm back on one of these paths that are in the middle of the median between the two sides of the boulevard. This is along Douglas Boulevard, and they're really nice. Really lots of trees. The path is just kind of winding through. Interesting two flat homes, brick and stone homes on each side of the path. Really a nice amenity to the neighborhood.
Independence Boulevard provides a spacious bike lane as it heads north towards the Eisenhower Expressway. Nichols Tower lies to the east of Independence Boulevard and is the centerpiece of the former Sears, Roebuck & Company complex. This 250-foot tower was built in 1906 and was restored in 2015. Today it is a community center and event space, and it can be considered the original Sears Tower. This point provides an opportunity to get a Chicago-style hot dog at a Chicago culinary institution.
The original Maxwell Street is right on the route. Independence and 290. 425 gets you a Chicago-style hot dog and a small bag of fries. Not a bad deal. Should give me the fuel necessary to get to the end of the Boulevard tour. So check it out when you're on the route.
Upon crossing the expressway, Independence Boulevard reaches the south end of Garfield Park. At 323 acres, Garfield Park is the largest of the three West Parks and is known as the crown jewel of the West Side. It was originally named Central Park, but was renamed in 1881 to honor James A. Garfield, who, like William McKinley, was also assassinated. The most prominent feature of Garfield Park is the Gold Dome Fieldhouse that sits in the center of the park and is surrounded by lagoons. This Chicago landmark was built in 1928 and lies just west of the downtown center. The area around the fieldhouse offers beautiful natural settings. However, there are signs of neglect and drug activity along the paths that deteriorate the experience of the park. The Green Line L runs through Garfield Park along Lake Street. The Conservatory stop is at Central Park Avenue, a street that is named for the original park's name. The Garfield Park Conservatory sits on the north side of the L line and offers free admission to a conservatory that contains 3 habitats with over 100,000 plants. The massive facility was designed by noted landscape architect Jens Jensen in 1908. It is well maintained and worth a closer look when in Garfield Park. Shortly beyond the conservatory, Central Park Avenue turns right onto Franklin Boulevard, which briefly heads east towards downtown Chicago. This brief stretch provides views of the downtown skyline while traveling towards Sacramento Boulevard. A left turn onto Sacramento brings the ride through an industrial setting and under a large railroad underpass. This underpass and the surrounding road contains a large, unhoused population. The south end of Humboldt Park is reached at Augusta Boulevard. Humboldt Park is the third of the West Parks. The area around the park was dominated by German immigrants when the park was created in the 1870s. As such, the park was named after German naturalist Alexander von Humboldt. Jens Jensen redesigned the park in the early 1900s, creating landscapes representative of Midwest prairies, with a mixture of nature areas, native plants, lagoons, and meandering paths. The Humboldt Park lagoons rose in notoriety in the summer of 2019 when an alligator was repeatedly spotted by visitors to the park. The reptile quickly became a sensation, and a naming contest came up with the name Chance the Snapper. For better or worse, an expert from Florida was called in, and Chance the Snapper was captured, and has spent the year since living in an alligator sanctuary in Florida.
So it was in these lagoons in Humboldt Park in 2019 when Chance the Snapper was roaming freely, being spotted by park visitors. He became a local hero, celebrity. People would come out to Humboldt Park, look to spy Chance the Snapper. And then they finally called some guy in from Florida, and he caught him in July of 2019. And Chance the Snapper, he's living in a Florida alligator sanctuary now. But for one brief moment, Chance the Snapper roamed these waters.
The area around Humboldt Park is now home to the highest concentration of Puerto Rican residents in the city of Chicago, and signs of Puerto Rican culture are everywhere in and around the park. The Puerto Rican Arts and Culture Center is housed in what was originally the Humboldt Park Stables and Refectory, an impressive red brick structure with a gabled clay tile roof with many dimensions. The heart of Humboldt Park lies to the north of Division Street, which is anchored by the Humboldt Park Fieldhouse. This expansive structure sits above a beach that is filled with water during the summer months, a one-of-a-kind feature among Chicago parks. The park also contains countless recreational facilities, including Little Cubs Field, which harkens images of Wrigley Field, albeit on a much smaller scale. North Avenue runs along the northern edge of Humboldt Park, and Humboldt Boulevard extends north from this point. This stretch of road has comparatively light traffic and begins a stretch that is filled with historic buildings of brick and stone that are representative of late 19th century craftsmanship. L. Frank Baum lived at 1667 Humboldt Boulevard and wrote The Wizard of Oz in 1899 while living in this area. One block beyond Baum's house, the road travels under the Bloomington rail line. This rail line began in 1913 and ran until the 1990s. After decades of abandonment, it was transformed into the Bloomingdale Trail in 2015. Popularly known as the 606, this 2.7-mile-long elevated multi-use trail runs above street level. It provides a meticulously detailed setting with great views of downtown along its stretch. Humboldt Boulevard reaches Palmer Square Park a few blocks after passing under the 606. Palmer Square Park is a cross between a full park and a roadway median, and provides meandering paths and a fair amount of public artwork. Palmer Square extends west to Kedzie Boulevard, where a right turn brings the route north towards Logan Square Park. Kedzie Boulevard has parkways on both sides of the road and continues the north side stretch, in which cycling can be done on a less trafficked portion of the road along an endless string of historic buildings. The Illinois Centennial Monument towers over Logan Square. This 70-foot column was dedicated in 1918 in commemoration of the 100th year of Illinois statehood. It is crowned by a large eagle that is also depicted in the Illinois state flag. Logan Square is an active spot at the heart of the Logan Square neighborhood. Milwaukee Avenue cuts through in a diagonal direction, creating a dizzying flow of traffic. The Boulevard System continues heading east along Logan Boulevard. This stretch contains the highest priced real estate along the 28 miles of Boulevard and provides a serene setting for observing a series of homes that are meticulously maintained. This tranquil setting comes to an abrupt end upon reaching the Kennedy Expressway. It is at this point that the quintessential setting of the Boulevard System ceases to exist.
You know, the beauty of the Boulevard System, it comes to an end when Logan Boulevard meets Diversey Parkway. They couldn't get their act together on the north side, and Diversey Parkway, it's a narrow street. No median, no homes on each side, no tree lines, street. So in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm going to make the final push along Diversey to Lincoln Park and complete this 28-mile tour.
Upon passing under the expressway, Logan Boulevard meets Diversey Parkway, a road in a traditional city street form, 65-foot wide, one lane in each direction, no parkway median, and a lack of old-growth trees and historic homes. Diversey Parkway was originally intended to have the same characteristics of the other boulevards in the system, while linking Logan Square and Lincoln Park. However, there were legal battles in the late 1800s in which residents opposed the special taxes needed to create the infrastructure necessary for the wide street. By the time all of these disputes were settled, Diversey had been built up to a point in which redevelopment was not feasible. Consequently, the 2.5-mile stretch along Diversey between the Chicago River and Lincoln Park are defined by a congested city street that does not contain much room to ride a bike. Lincoln Park is eventually reached at Sheridan Road, where Cannon Drive begins a diagonal route through the northern end of the park. The 1,200-plus acre park is the largest in Chicago, and it was created in 1860 before the Parks Commission was established. However, the Lincoln Parks Commission was established and tasked with expanding the park and facilitating the clearing of the Chicago City Cemetery that was situated on what is now the north end of Lincoln Park. The park's original name was Lake Park, due to its location directly adjacent to Lake Michigan. However, the park was renamed to Lincoln Park after the 1865 assassination of President Abraham Lincoln. For those keeping track, this gives Chicago 3 major parks named after 3 assassinated presidents. The Lincoln Park Commission succeeded wildly in expanding Lincoln Park, as it now stretches 6 miles to the north and contains a remarkable amount of amenities. Lincoln Park Zoo opened in 1868 as one of the first zoos in the United States. A conservatory was added in 1890, and similar to the zoo, is free to the public. There is also a nature museum, lily pool, and access to the Chicago Lakefront Path and all that it has to offer.
You know, Lincoln Park, it takes the prize for the nicest park in all of Chicago. I mean, it is huge. It has a free zoo, a conservatory, a nature museum, and it's just really peaceful and nice, and people are out. So, saving the best for last, I guess.
Similar to previous parks visited, Jens Jensen had a major hand in the current form of this expansive park. There are miles of paths throughout the park that are lined with statues of some of the greatest minds in Western civilization, including William Shakespeare, Hans Christian Andersen, Alexander Hamilton, Benjamin Franklin, Ulysses S. Grant, and the park's namesake, Abraham Lincoln. On the southern end of the park sits the Chicago History Museum. This building sits on the former site of the Chicago City Cemetery, which was opened in 1840. However, nearly all graves were exhumed and relocated by the mid-1890s. One grave that remains is the 1858 mausoleum for Ira Couch, which is the point at which this tour of Chicago's Emerald Necklace, its Boulevard System, comes to an end.
And that's a wrap of the 30-plus miles of Chicago Boulevards. I'm ending it on the south side of Lincoln Park, in what was formerly Chicago City Cemetery, at the only tomb remaining, the Couch Tomb. 7 major parks, over 24 boulevards, and a great tour throughout Chicago.
I hope you have enjoyed this overview of the Chicago Boulevard System, from the history of the Emerald Necklace to its current condition. Furthermore, I hope that it inspires you to get out and explore parts or all of this one-of-a-kind feature in the city of Chicago.